Again, I'll welcome everyone here this morning. Yep, we're good. Happy 4th of July. Well, I guess as a nation we'll celebrate tomorrow, but as a church we celebrate it today. And so happy Independence Day. First off, it feels a bit self-serving, but again, thank you to all those who served in our armed forces. The All-Wise Facebook put out a post that said, to every member who's ever served in the armed forces, be them reserve or active, infantry or quartermaster, at one point in time, they signed a blank check to the government that said up to and including my life. And so for those of you who've ever served, thank you. Well done. Also, big shout out to all the families out there. All right, I'm going to move on from that. Happy 4th. Happy Independence Day. And so, as a nation, we gather this weekend to celebrate. A group of men broke off from oppression. They fought against it, and they created a government designed specifically to give dignity, respect, and equality to every human being whoever enters their nation, right? Again, our Pledge of Allegiance, right? Pledge allegiance to the flag, USA, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. And so as a nation, certainly we have not done that perfectly, right? By all means, a quick perusal of our history, if we look at the way that we've treated Native Americans, Africans, who we've kidnapped, women, and yet for each of those examples, as a nation, we have recognized our sin, we have repented, and we have moved toward healing that wound. And by no means have we healed all of these wounds, but we're getting there, right? We're getting there. And so for that, I am proud to call myself an American, right? And that ideal of liberty and justice for all, I'll fight for that. Right? I love, just quick, I guess, sidebar. We got Olympics coming up, right? And right now we got Wimbledon on. And so I love watching tennis, and specifically ladies' tennis, because the Williams sisters just dominate. If you don't know who Serena and Venus Williams are, they're Americans, they're African Americans, and if I remember right, they come from sort of a rags to riches background. And so I just love that they are kicking tail in tennis all over the world, right? Because I don't think like our American ladies are genetically superior to athletics to the rest of the world, right? But we tend, or at least our ladies, tend to do very well in global sports. And I think that's a direct outflow of, in our country, we have said, no, women, you get a fair shot, right? You want to play sports, you play sports, right? We give, you want to vote, you can have a vote, right? You want a job, it's yours. And certainly, again, we haven't reached that perfectly, right? There's still pay discrepancy between men and women of the same position. And yet our freedom of press, right? Our freedom to peacefully assemble, right? All of that guarantees that we can cry out against injustice and we can do something about it. And so I think that is commendable, and I am happy to be proud to be part of a nation in which that is possible. And so happy Independence Day. That being said, this is a church where we gather to worship Jesus. And so my interest this morning is, my foremost identity is Christian, right? I'm a Christian and I live in America, right? So Jesus is the King of all kings, right? And so my foremost allegiance is to him, which means if my Christian allegiance ever comes into conflict with my American allegiance, I'm going Jesus 10 out of 10, right? At least I hope I would. So my interest then is, how does my highest allegiance, how does that inform the way that I carry out my American identity? Right? How does Jesus inform the way that I conduct American citizenship. Right? So the text that comes to mind is Jeremiah 29, and I'm going to read verses 4 through 7. And to give you context, this is Jeremiah's a prophet. He's writing to Israel who's in exile. So Israel has been captured, invaded by the Babylonians, and then taken off into exile. They've been captured. Imagine 30 years ago, the Soviets win, they invade, and now we Americans, we've been captured, and we got deported to Siberia or something, right? That's sort of the situation. And here's what God says. He says, "This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and settle down. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there, do not decrease. And also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper." All right, so if I can sum that up, Israel's taken into exile, and God says, seek the good of the city to which I have carried you. Seek the good of that city, of that nation. Seek its good. So then, that begs the question then, how? Like, what would that look like? How do we seek the good of our city or of our nation, right? And two questions that are always on my mind that I'm never going to stop asking. Where is the brokenness, and what are we going to do about it? Right. So the first question: where is the brokenness here, inside these four walls, and what are we going to do about it? Where is the brokenness outside these four walls, and where is the brokenness globally, and what are we going to do about it? Right. I can't stop asking those questions. If we ever stop asking those questions, might as well just lock up the doors and we'll sell it back to a barbecue pit, right? That's our job as a church, right? Where's the brokenness, and what are we going to do about it, right? I am called by Jesus to fight against sin and darkness, right? Here's the kicker. We don't resist in the same way that the world resists. We don't fight in the same way that the world fights. All right, so here's what I mean. I'm going to read this once. We're going to look at a photo, talk about it, and we'll go over it again. If as I'm talking and I'm asking, where's the brokenness? What are we going to do about it? And you're starting to get some ideas in your head, maybe forming a plan of action about, I see brokenness here. Maybe here's something I could do about it. If your image of making this church great, or making Wadesville great, or making America great, if that has anything to do with you or your friends or Christians or people like you, if that has anything to do with you being elevated to a position of power, influence, or status, then I contend your imagination has been taken captive, and you are not thinking in accordance with Jesus. All right? But if, as I talk, you're imagining actions that will make you vulnerable, that will require sacrifice, humility, and will place you in the role of a servant for another, now you're starting to think like Jesus. All right? So here's what I mean. Whoever's got the clicker, can we go to the next slide, please? That's our King. Now, just cease monologue. Let's dialogue here for a minute, and just think. Imagine you're back in this scene, all right, and you're watching it. And first, I want you to imagine you're the man on the cross. All right, imagine. Let's brainstorm a minute. What are some feelings? What are some emotions that might be running through you as you're enduring this? And don't give me you can give me church answers, but I want you to think before you just spout out some answers. What are some feelings you might be having? Despair? Sure. Right? Other thoughts. How's your body feel? pain. Sure, is there anything comfortable about this? No. It's painful. Right? In most of our paintings, we usually put a loincloth on Jesus that's probably not historically accurate. Right? So you're just thrown up there stark naked. How's that going to make you feel? Embarrassed? Shame? Right? So in this scene, right, which is the center point of our faith, we've got intense pain, shame, embarrassment, humiliation, right? We've got insane sacrifice of an innocent on behalf of those who are not innocent, right? Does anybody stick with Jesus as he's hanging there? Right? Maybe his mom, maybe Mary, by and large, all of his friends, his crew desert him. Right? So you're alone, you're forsaken. Right? Even at the end, he cries out, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" Right? Do you think there's any happiness in Jesus right now? Right? Do you think maybe he's got a little bit of anger welling up? Pretty sure if I was in that spot, I'd pull the God card. I'd just, whoop. All right, I'm coming down. I'm starting to throw some punches, right? That's what I would do. Right? Is there anything, pretend you're not on the cross, now you're in the crowd and you're watching this spectacle. Does anybody who's watching this think, oh, this guy just carried off a huge victory? No, not a chance. Right? Imagine you're one of his disciples. Right? Imagine you laid down everything for this guy. Right? You left home, you put down your wallet, you put down everything for this guy, and now he's crucified like a common criminal. Right? Imagine you're Peter, you're John, you're thinking, you betrayed me. Right? I thought you were going to be I thought you were the one. I thought you were something special, and now you're just a dead guy on a cross like every other wannabe Messiah that's come before you. You imagine the disappointment that you would feel, right, as you're watching this. Right? It's no wonder Peter goes back to fishing. Right? I mean, when we look at Jesus' life as a whole, right, he starts off a baby born in a manger, which is just a trough chipped out of some rock, maybe with a little hay thrown in there. Right? Born in a manger, and then from the moment he is born, he is persecuted, right? And because of his birth, an entire village full of young boys is slaughtered. And so he's got to escape to a different town, right? A different nation. Finally, you come back, you live a normal blue-collar life, right, for a few years, and then the epitome of your ministry is you become like a homeless wanderer calling together this ragtag bunch of nobodies, right? And at every turn, you are persecuted by those who have power and influence, till finally, they figure out a way to just straight up kill you. Does that sound like a winning life to anybody? Does anybody be like, I want my kids to do that when they grow up, right? When you're a first grader, what do you want to do when you grow up, Ben? Homeless martyr? Or not. I think I'd rather be a dentist or something, right? Right, so does this in any way, shape, or form, the life of Jesus, does that look like a winning ticket? Anybody going to bet on that horse? No way. Except something happens, right? Something happens. And we know that this was the winning ticket despite everything we would have thought, right? Because 3 days later, that cross is empty. Because 3 days later, the grave is empty, the stone is rolled away, and the king rises from the dead and ushers in the new creation. Right? And so, in a way that nobody saw coming, Jesus wins the day and saves the world on a ticket nobody would have laid down any money on, in a way that nobody would have said, yeah, I want that life. And yet, that is how Jesus saves the world. And we, Christians, we are called to follow in his footsteps. We are called to follow in his footsteps. Which means, let me read this again. If your image of making America great, of making Wadesville great, of making Wadesville Christian Church great, if that has anything to do with us being elevated to positions of power, influence, or status, our imaginations have been taken captive. But if we imagine situations that will probably be embarrassing, that will be humiliating, that will be shameful, that will put us in positions of weakness, that will force us to put our heart on the table, knowing that if we do that enough, somebody is going to stab a knife right through it. Knowing that whatever we do is going to lead to hurt, it will require everything of us. I will put my wallet on the table, I will put my house on the table. It will require everything of me. Now we're thinking like Jesus. Right? And that is the opposite. If I love the freedom and liberty that our nation stands for, but as a culture, we worship wealth and comfort. And there is nothing rich or comfortable about that position. He has nothing to his name, and he is in intense pain. So our job as Christians is we seek the good of our nation, of our community, of our city. But as we do so, we must be shaped by that, because that is how Jesus won, and that is how we must win. That is what a good fight looks like. Right? So whatever we have in mind, however we're going to try and fix things, right? We've got plenty of interpersonal conflict among us. The only way we're going to get through that is we are just going to have to lay our hearts on the table. Somebody's going to have to be vulnerable. Somebody's going to have to open themselves up. Someone is going to have to put themselves at the feet of another. And if we do that, good chance you're going to bow down and they're going to kick you in the face. You're going to open your heart and somebody is going to punch you and rip it out. Right? That's what happened to him. Abandoned, shamed, embarrassed, intense pain, intense discomfort, total sacrifice. That is our calling. You know, it's funny. There were a number of times Jesus, a big crowd would assemble, and so everybody, big crowd, and he'd have compassion. And so he'd say they were hungry, let's give them some food. So he'd take some bread, some fish, break it up, and he'd feed everybody, right? So everybody gets full. They kind of get lulled into sleep. They wake up the next morning, Jesus is gone, and they're like, I kind of want some breakfast. And so they chase him down. They gather around him. Do you know what Jesus does? He says, whoa. No. This ain't going to look like you want it to look. I'm going to be your king, but that's what my crown is. Right? This is what my kingdom looks like. You want to follow me? It's going to require pain, discomfort, sacrifice, embarrassment, shame. You know what the crowds do? They say, oh, I'll catch you later, Jesus. I don't really want to be a part of that. I thought you were going to give me something else. Right? But if we want to be faithful, and our ministry is a good one, then it should leave us looking like this. I don't know about you, that looks really, really painful, right? I don't think there's anything fun about that position right there, right? I don't think there's anything joyful. The end result is joyful, but going through that is horrific, right? So I'll give you a couple examples, right? Both relatively simple. The first one, as we all know, we have a pastoral relations committee, which is a committee where if you have beef with me, you send it to them, and then they forward it on to me. And so we met Thursday. I got like a page single space of complaints. Many of them or if not all of them, legitimate, all right? So, so it's like 5-on-1, and they're just pointing out all of your flaws. You ever been in that situation? It's horrific. There's nothing enjoyable about that. I don't care how much you say you're on my side. My heart says, you're a liar. My brain says, I know you are, but my heart says, you are full of baloney. You are not on my side because you are pointing out all of my weaknesses, right? It's horrific. It is not fun. And I've spent like the last 3 days just like angry and in pain and like, right? It's terrible. It is absolutely terrible, right? A lot of the blame for stuff ends up landing on my plate, which is fine. And so as I'm going through, as I'm processing, like, what do I want to do? Well, I wanted at the meeting to just stand up, flip the table, and say, forget all you, and just like, I'm out of here. Forget this, right? But that would not be very Jesus-like. And in fact, as I've been examining, I made myself vulnerable. See, I opened myself up to critique, and the end result is that I will be a better pastor, right? The end result is that I will have genuine humility instead of actually saying I have humility but not actually possessing it, right? The end result is good, but the process to get there is terrible. I mean, it's just flat out awful. There's no joy in that at all, right? I mean, it's miserable. Some of you have opened yourselves up, you have trusted someone else, and they have just flat out betrayed you. I mean, they have taken your heart, and they have just crushed it. And you are hurt, and you are broken. And you just want to lash out. You don't know where to go, and it feels like this great injustice has been done to you, because it has. And might I say, you're with him. You're with him. That's the same thing that happened to him. I'll give you another example that's much simpler. So a few months ago, I went, my old shoes were like all broken and worn out. Right? So you know how like they tend to, the material just breaks out over time. And so they were pretty broken and beat up. So I went down to Payless, right next to Kohl's there on the west side, and I picked these up. So these are Merrells. I've had Merrells in the past. They're really comfortable. They're a nice shoe. They're like low top. I can kind of wear them here, but I can play in the woods with them too. And I got them for like $70. I got them on sale. They were $80 or $90 normally, so I caught a good deal. I'm like, all right, money well spent. Got a good shoe, got a good product. Great. See, the thing I didn't stop and take time to consider is, if you look at the tag, these are made in China, which I probably knew. That's why they were low cost, right? Here's what I know. More than likely, these are a product of unjust and oppressive working conditions. More than likely, everything I know about work conditions in China is that maybe some kid, certainly whoever it was, they were not paid very well, and their working conditions were probably terrible. They probably had to work hours that they didn't get paid for, right? And probably unsafe conditions, right? So if I can put this in blatant terms, I was able to get a good deal because some peasant was not, right? I am a contributor to injustice, and I didn't even think about it, right? My phone, in my pocket here, this is an iPhone, which you all pay for, so thank you. I just read a review in 2015. They sent some undercover worker into the iPhone factories in China. The conditions are just flat out appalling, right? So that I can get this cheaply, some peasant had to go underpaid, ill-equipped. I'm a contributor to injustice, right? Now, the iPhone, I don't know how to get around that. I feel like this is a requirement for my job, and I mean, if I go to Samsung, is that going to be any different? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to do about this. I really don't. I need, these shoes are fine, when these wear out, I can wear these till they wear out. It doesn't feel like it would accomplish anything to just toss them. But I got a pair of running shoes at home that are just straight up worn out, and I need running shoes. I'm not exaggerating. I'm a soldier. I have to have running shoes. They are part of my uniform. I can't go without running shoes. And so I looked online trying to find, are there any shoes made in the States or anywhere where I know these were under fair conditions? And there are some, but I don't have $250, $300 to drop on a pair of shoes. Like, y'all don't pay me enough for that. You pay me enough. I'm not complaining. Just not for that, right? And so what am I going to do? I will not be a contributor to injustice. I'm not going to do it. So unless I can find someone locally who produces shoes who I can get a good deal with or something, I'm stuck. And so the only solution I can come up with in my mind is I got to find some old tire, cut out a tread. I'm pretty good with leather work, and so I'm going to have to make my own shoes because I can't afford to buy US-made ones. Or I would take German-made or Swedish-made, right? If they're made under not oppressive conditions, right? I have to make my own shoes, right? And you know what that's going to lead to? Embarrassment, right? They're probably not going to be nearly as comfortable as these. So I'm going to be in some pain, some embarrassment, right? A little bit of shame, right? Because all my friends are going to have nice shoes and I'll have these old tires on my feet, right? And then as I think about that, I see shame, I see pain, and I see embarrassment. And it's not going to be fun wearing stupid shoes, but I'll be in good company. And so I just invite you. We live in a land that is characterized by the things we want. If we can describe a good life, we would say wealth and comfort. And I would just say there's nothing rich or comfortable about that position. There's nothing rich or comfortable about the King we follow. And if we are following him faithfully, it'll probably lead to pain, embarrassment, shame, mockery. But in the end, the only way to get to the empty cross behind the screen is to go through the cross on the screen. That's the only way we get there. And so I am bound and determined, I am going to be a disciple. And I just invite you to join me. Would you pray with me? Jesus, as we gather in your house this morning, as we gather as a community, which is your body, I pray that we would be faithful, that we would manifest your body. And your body is broken, and your scars are still there. And so I pray that you would give us the courage and the wisdom and the discipline and the grace, the humility, all of that, the love for neighbor, that we would be faithful. And so please, I just beg you to help us. And we need you to carry us through, because I don't want to go there willingly. But I know where you are, that is where resurrection is, and that is what I want, and that is what I need. And so please, would you take us there? And would you give us the grace to submit willingly? We'll love you, we'll praise you, and it is in and for your precious name that I pray. Amen.